All right, let's dive into a moment in the Gospel of Luke you've probably heard 100 times, but maybe haven't really seen. It seems like just a sweet little detail, but what if it's way more than that? What if it's this huge theological statement about who the very first witness to Jesus actually was?
So here's the question at the heart of it all. You've got a baby leaping in his mother's womb. Is that just, a cute detail the author threw in, or is it a theological bombshell? Something that could totally reframe how we think about the very start of the whole salvation story. Let's dig in and see. Okay, so first things first. Let's just quickly set the scene. We're going to revisit that really famous encounter from Luke's Gospel. You know the story, right? It's pretty simple on the surface. Mary, she's just found out she's pregnant with Jesus, goes to visit her relative, Elizabeth. And Elizabeth, she's also pregnant, which is a miracle in itself, with the baby who's going to grow up to be John the Baptist. So it just looks like a simple family visit. But is that all it is? All right, so let's get to the core of it. A baby kicks. Big deal, right? Babies do that. But in this story, why is this one little movement seen as something so much more than just a reflex? Let's break it down. Okay, so everything really boils down to this one question. Are we looking at a simple biological event here? Just a random kick? Or is this something else entirely? Is it what the text suggests? A theological event? A response that's actually enabled by the Holy Spirit? And you have to look at how Luke puts this whole scene together. It's not random at all. It's like a chain reaction, one thing happening right after the other. Boom, boom, boom. Mary says her greeting. Immediately, John leaps. Instantly, Elizabeth is filled with the Holy Spirit. And then she speaks this prophecy that explains the whole thing. The timing here is absolutely everything.
So what's the point of all that? Well, the point is that this structure, this sequence, is totally intentional. Luke is making a direct line, connecting the baby's physical leap to the spiritual insight his mother suddenly has. Think about it. The leap is the trigger for the prophecy. It's not just some happy coincidence. It's being presented as a moment that was orchestrated by God.
And this leads us to a really fascinating idea. Can you be a witness to something without actually saying anything? Can you give testimony without speaking a single word?
Well, there's this concept called a prophetic witness, and the whole idea is that, yeah, you absolutely can. Testimony doesn't always have to be spoken. It can be an action, a gut reaction, a deep recognition of a divine reality, and it's all prompted by the Spirit. John's leap, it's the textbook example of this. And get this didn't just come out of nowhere. If you rewind a little bit in the story, you'll remember that an angel actually promised this would happen. The angel said John would be filled with the Holy Spirit even from his mother's womb. So this scene, this leap, it's the payoff. It's the direct fulfillment of that promise. The Holy Spirit is at work in John before he even takes his first breath.
There's a great line from the analysis we're looking at that just nails it. It says the leap is, quote, not sensory in the ordinary sense. It is spirit-enabled recognition. So what does that mean? It means John isn't just hearing a sound with developing ears. This is something deeper. It's the Spirit itself allowing him to recognize something incredible.
And the implication of that is, well, it's huge. It means that John's entire life's purpose, his prophetic calling to prepare the way for the Messiah, it didn't kick off when he was a grown man eating locusts and wild honey in the desert. Nope, it started right here, in his mother's womb.
Okay, but it gets even better. Let's talk about the climax of this whole encounter. It's not just that John recognizes someone. It's who he recognizes. And the claim that's made is just stunning.
So Elizabeth, filled with the Holy Spirit, doesn't just say, hey cousin, good to see you. She says something extraordinary. She asks, the mother of my Lord comes to me. Pay attention to those two words, my Lord. In this context, that title is packed with meaning. It's a huge deal.
And that's it. Right there, that's the mic drop moment of the whole passage. Jesus is Lord. Not later, not after the resurrection, not even after his ministry begins. Right now. As a tiny embryo, the very first time anyone in Luke's gospel confesses that Jesus is Lord, it comes from a woman interpreting the prophetic leap of an unborn baby. Just let that sink in for a second.
So think about this. Who gets to be the first to recognize Jesus for who he really is? Is it the high priest? A king? Nope. It's an unborn child and an elderly woman who was thought to be barren. Basically, two of the most marginalized, overlooked people you could imagine in that society. And if you know the Gospel of Luke, you know this is his signature move, God revealing incredible truths through the most unexpected people. And what this shows us so clearly
is that true spiritual recognition, in Luke's world, has zero to do with your social status. It's not about how powerful or educated or important you are. It's about one thing and one thing only, being open to the Holy Spirit.
Okay, so let's zoom out a little bit. What does all this mean for the big picture, for God's entire plan of salvation? Well, it suggests that the whole thing doesn't kick off with some big public spectacle. It starts quietly and starts hidden away in this incredibly profound and personal moment.
And here's where it gets really interesting, especially when you compare this to earlier scriptures. See, in the Old Testament, when you hear about babies moving in the womb, it's often a sign of struggle, like with Jacob and Esau, foreshadowing conflict to come. But Luke completely flips that script. John's leap isn't about struggle. It's about joy. It's an act of worship.
So the whole theme just does a 180. We're moving away from this idea of looking forward to a future struggle and right into the joyful fulfillment of God's promises, happening right now, in the present. The long wait is over. Salvation is here. And this completely reorders how we might think things should happen. You probably expect the sequence to be public ministry, then people proclaiming who Jesus is, and then finally people recognizing him. But Luke just turns that upside down. For him, it all starts with recognition, this private, spirit-enabled moment in the womb. That leads to proclamation, Elizabeth's prophecy. And the public ministry? That comes way later, built on top of this hidden foundation.
All right, so let's boil this all down. What are the key takeaways? First, God's work comes before any human action. Second, recognition comes before proclamation. Third, joy comes before speech. And finally, and maybe most incredibly of all, the very first witness to Jesus in the Gospel of Luke is an unborn child.
So, we're left with this one big final thought to chew on. If the very first, foundational act of witness in the entire story happened in secret, hidden away in a womb, unseen by anyone, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What profound, world-changing things are happening right now in the quiet, overlooked corners of our own lives that we might be completely missing?